Okay, I mean, we are ready. I mean, when you are okay, we can start. Josh.
Yeah, I think we can start now. So Massimo, welcome to our webinar. Just for a couple of minutes, we're going to have a look at the catalogue of MLA, and Massimo Tardi, the CEO of MLA, is going to introduce it. So I'll hand over to him.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Natalia. Allora, un caloroso benvenuto a tutti voi che siete sempre molto numerosi per la parte relativa all'attività di formazione, e ricordo quindi che ML è accreditato dal Ministero, dal MIUR, quindi noi siamo proprio accreditati per effettuare formazione ai docenti. È un'attività che facciamo gratuitamente ogni settimana con formatori naturalmente diversi, e è un'attività che raccoglie sempre tantissime adesioni da parte dei group leader, quindi questo mi riempie il cuore di gioia. Tra l'altro io vengo proprio dalla scuola perché i miei genitori erano entrambi insegnanti di inglese, quindi sono nato proprio, diciamo, in questo mondo, per chi non mi conoscesse. E dunque volevo soltanto utilizzare proprio la presenza degli insegnanti di oggi proprio per poter diciamo spiegare un nuovissimo prodotto di MLA. Sapete che MLA è un operatore diciamo tra i leader delle vacanze studio in Italia, un nuovo prodotto che noi abbiamo proprio lanciato ieri, e volevo spiegarvi il concept di questo catalogo. Si chiama Anteprima 2023, tanto è vero che siamo gli unici ad essere usciti praticamente con un catalogo al momento, ed è un estratto di sostanzialmente alcuni centri che poi verranno ovviamente pubblicati anche in un catalogo più importante che uscirà invece nel mese di novembre, come siamo soliti fare, dove ci saranno naturalmente tanti altri centri relativi alle vacanze studio, tanti altri college disponibili. Perché è importante questa anteprima? Questa anteprima è importante perché consente ai nostri diciamo group leader, quindi gli insegnanti che fanno questa attività delle vacanze studio, di poter avere soltanto con 90 euro dei prezzi molto bassi, e quindi poter spuntare i prezzi più bassi del mercato. Quindi qualora ci fossero dei group leader, quindi degli insegnanti che fanno anche l'attività delle vacanze studio, è interessante per queste persone. Vi faccio vedere questa slide che racchiude un po' tutti gli elementi, diciamo, più importanti proprio della parte relativa diciamo, a questa anteprima. Quindi sostanzialmente, piuttosto che aspettare il catalogo di novembre, con il versamento di 90 euro da parte di ogni studente interessato, quindi collegato a un group leader, si sceglie questa early booking che ha una data di scadenza che è il 7 di novembre, esattamente una settimana prima della nostra convention nazionale che verrà fatta a Parigi, dove naturalmente noi invitiamo solitamente tutti i nostri group leader che lavorano l'anno prima, che hanno lavorato quest'estate, quindi con MLA, è in quell'occasione che viene lanciato il catalogo diciamo generale della vacanza studio. Ci sono dei vantaggi esclusivi, come dicevo, perché questi prezzi sono i prezzi più bassi del mercato, e quindi sicuramente molto più bassi quelli che troverete nel catalogo di MLA, ma anche direi tra i più bassi del mercato. Abbiamo una garanzia prezzi bloccati inclusa in questi prezzi, in questi pacchetti, quindi naturalmente i prezzi sono bloccati dalle oscillazioni diciamo valutarie, quindi sia per la sterlina che per il dollaro. Abbiamo inserito le tariffe fisse come città di partenza, quindi indipendenti dal numero di studenti. Naturalmente sono disponibili dei pagamenti dilazionati, e poi c'è una garanzia salvo acconto, vale a dire io scelgo uno dei centri pubblicati nell'anteprima. Nel caso in cui il catalogo generale dovesse avere un centro per me più interessante, i 90 euro che ho versato ovviamente verranno riutilizzati anche un altro centro che magari non è presente in questo stesso catalogo. Anche se devo dire, questa anteprima è un'anteprima molto ricca, in quanto c'è sia l'America, l'Inghilterra, l'Irlanda, è un catalogo di circa 50 pagine, quindi è un vero e proprio, diciamo, catalogo. Ecco, quindi volevo semplicemente sottoporvi questa bellissima, importantissima, diciamo, novità, questa dell'anteprima, e vi lascio adesso al corso di formazione, e naturalmente vi ringrazio per la vostra presenza, e buon corso di formazione.
Okay, thank you very much, Massimo.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks a lot.
Okay, everyone. After we've talked about that, we'll go back to our webinar, or begin our webinar. And if you're joining us just now, I'd like to introduce Dahlia, who's going to be presenting this webinar about using art in the English classroom. And look, I'll just go through the first couple of slides. So just remember that you will receive a certificate of participation and a webinar handout in the next few days by email. If you don't receive it, please email us at Formazione, okay, and we'll get it out to you. Okay. All the important information from the slides and some extra links and other things will be on there. Okay, so make sure you get that and let us know if you don't get it. Okay, with that, I'll hand over to Dahlia.
All right. Hi. Hello, everybody. So we are going to be looking at using art in the English classroom. So why is this important? I feel like anything that helps language acquisition and in turn really makes our jobs much easier is a fun addition to teaching. So art in this sense is an effective tool for teaching students the English language. And if we go on to the next point.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. Yeah, it allows students to be creative, to put their knowledge into practice and enjoy an easygoing pace in an English classroom. So instead of always using our books and looking at grammar and so forth, this gives them a chance to interact, putting what they know into practice, especially the fact that today, because of social media, students are exposed to hundreds of images every hour. Actually, it really does depend on how often they're flicking through their phones. So to focus on single images, I think it will help them to improve not only their focus, their concentration, but also just to match things, give a moment to pause, really. So that's why I think it's actually quite important. And then you also have the fact that it's a very important point is that it's an inclusive method. It allows students of different abilities to come together. So usually, this is what I've noticed also from teaching myself. What I've noticed is that the students usually shoot their hands up are the ones who are really prepared and eager, while the quieter and shyer students, even though they may know the answer, become a little bit intimidated. So by using a different method, different technique, such as art in this case, I think it allows the kids who are quieter to kind of move a little forward. Maybe they're more artistically inclined. So it's a great way of kind of just getting the class to be a community, I think, is the main word.
Very much a theme of our webinars is, you know, all the different ways we can connect with all the students. You know, the quiet ones might be interested in different things. So yeah, music, art, comics, all of these things, films, things like that. There must be something you can connect with. Okay?
Exactly, yeah.
Also, let us know in the chat. Some people have already done that, but let us know if you've ever used lessons based on art in your lessons, okay? So tell us in the chat, continue telling us during the webinar. And we have some objectives here, as we always do. I'll leave those to Dahlia.
Okay, yeah, so our objectives, it's very simple, I feel. I mean, I think it's the idea is to use art as a method to encourage discussions and to practice a variety of language. Encourage discussions in the sense that students will love to be heard and appreciated. Also, it will help students to feel more confident, to express their thoughts and opinions, which is obviously crucial when learning a second language.
Yeah, I think always giving anyone some sort of reason to talk means they'll make the effort in English. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so using up-to-date news. The idea here is that we link the outside world with our English class. Okay, so what I've brought here today is something that's been in the news, I'd say, for about a week and a half now. I mean, at least in the British television, it's been on every day, every channel is covering this. So and I think it's the same also in Italy. So it makes sense to bring what is being discussed around the kitchen table, maybe, or in front of the television to class. And so students here are presented with pictures of Queen Elizabeth II on the board, on the tables, whatever you have available. You let them look at the pictures for a bit, and you ask them if they know who she is. So in this case, it's very difficult. They won't know who she is. And you ask, what do they know about her? And in this case, they will obviously start saying she's the queen, she's the majesty, oh, she's, Prince Philip died recently, she's his wife. So they'll start connecting things. And they will choose eventually one of the photos to talk and write about. Now, what could they say? So this leads to a writing and a speaking activity. What made you choose this photo? So since they have been presented with a variety of photos, and I think the most important thing here is that the photos are different, not only in color or material, but also in emotion. It gives them something to say. It gives them also something to predict, to make a conclusion about. So this way their writing becomes even more, or their speaking becomes in depth. It gives them a chance to use their imagination. So describe what's happening in the photo is the first steps. And then, what do you think this photo says about Elizabeth? So it's a bit of introspective thought, right? So they can just, obviously they will never know. So they make up what they see, what they think she's thinking. And then you would hit them with the big question. Why do you think the Queen and the royal family in general is so fascinating to so many? Now, there will be a variety of answers. Some people will be like, I don't know. Some people will be like, I don't like her. I don't care. But I think the idea is to get them to think of other people's perspective. Right, so they're doing reported speech at the same time. So I know that my mum, or because they're of different generations. So I know that my mum or my sister or my aunt, grandmother said, and then they would have to explain using reported speech to what they have heard, and what in return leads them to thinking like that too. And so if you feel sometimes the classes are not ready to be doing one-on-one activities, it may be too much for them. As a starter, one could also look at just one image. I mean, for example, if we take the most famous image here of Andy Warhol, right, on the side where there's loads of different colors, it's pop art, there's the Queen, there's other filters imposed on top. You get students to focus on one image. And I'm sure they will have loads to say, but this way it allows the students to become more confident to attack images by themselves. And so, yeah, and honestly, you can use anybody.
I think, yeah, this could be really updated. Obviously, up-to-date news. There's always someone who's in the news a lot, and you know, there's always easy to find a lot of pictures about them. So
definitely,
I'm sure, you know, this is just an idea, Queen Elizabeth. By the time you get to do this lesson, you may have another person that you might prefer to talk about. But yeah, the same sort of questions could be used.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so in this slide, we're going to be looking at an in-depth to a particular lesson plan, and it's called the art gallery. So the materials needed, very simple, and it's always amazing when you have to do very little prep. Materials, A4 paper. All right, so low prep, practicing comparatives, that's our objective here. And it's suitable really for all ages. I mean, I've done this with like 11-year-olds, 15-year-olds, all ages are open to it, including especially teenagers who are most difficult to motivate, I feel. Each student will get a piece of paper and write their name on the bottom right. All right, it's not me being a perfectionist wanting it on the bottom right. It's the idea of emulating a gallery. So it's been signed by every single student. They will have about 4 minutes to draw a picture. There must be a house. And in that house, there is a room. And in that room, there's a piece of art, as you can see on the example beside it. All right, so this may take them a while to kind of wrap their head around it, but it's really simple. It's in. All right, so there is now, there's always a student without fail, because it's part of teaching, who will say, teacher, I can't draw, non ce la faccio, sono scocciato, always, all right? But what you need to do basically is just make a joke out of it, I imagine. I mean, every teacher, I'm sure, is amazing or already dealing with these type of students. I usually just make a joke. I'm like, okay, don't worry, you don't have to be Da Vinci or whatever artist they like, just draw. And that's what they need to do. They need to get past that initial worry, anxiety that they have, really. Keep the instructions short and sweet. Right? It's not very complicated. They don't need to like deal with it for too long. Also stress, I think more than ever, is that there is no right or wrong answer. This is all their own interpretation. The room can be as big or as small as they like, as dark, as light. It's up to them. They are free to do as they wish. And then once they have completed all this work, you collect all the pictures and you let the students know their pictures will be hanging in an art gallery. So classroom wall or in tables, obviously depending on space, depending what space permits. And it will be seen by everybody. So there's no surprise from this part. And yeah, so the objective of the class, the instructions for the students simply is you are an editor of a local newspaper and you need art critics, which are the students, to visit the gallery and write about it. And that is their role. They are the critics of the images. Right, so I've given you some examples here, and as we read along, you will start to connect them. So language focus. Elicit adjectives from your students that refer to a house, such as big or small, and do the same with room and pieces of art, while noting on the board. Okay, so an adjective for room, an adjective for house, and an adjective for art pieces. These are things that you could say, for example, for room, you can say it's furnished, if it's elegant, old, modern. You can use a variety of adjectives, and it all depends on what students can tell you. So, like here, you can elucidate more words. So if they don't come up with them, you can help them, obviously. Dark, spacious, empty, and so forth. Next. So to practice comparatives, usually we do the drill and clap pronunciation. So if you have big, and that becomes the one syllable. And if it's a longer syllable, you have beautiful, right? So get students to do that. If they're shy about it, obviously they can just do it in their head, they're old enough, but clapping it out usually helps. So drill and clap the pronunciation of the adjectives you added, eliciting that short adjectives have one clap and long adjectives have multiple claps. And this usually helps them break it down. So to put it into practice, as an example of comparing two things, usually student participation is the best way. It kind of also allows the lesson to be, when you're starting to focus on the language, it becomes a bit of a moment to kind of bond with the students, you joke about it. I mean, you can do examples such as two students come out and you have a tall one and an obviously short student, okay? And you can say, you know, Matteo is taller than Thomas, or Thomas is shorter than Matteo. Or you could even do a full class example using the class that you have. If they are, I don't know, Quinta Liceo, so it's like Quinta is more intelligent than, I don't know, Quarta, as a comparative, as a joke, you know, you just have to kind of mock them sometimes. Or if you are on a better basis, if you're friends, you can even do it backwards. No, not friends, sorry, like, you know, you can joke around with the kids, you can do it backwards. So, and then adding the ER and the more adjective than. Now, once they've done this and they feel confident with the activity, using comparatives, especially adding on than at the end, they are ready for the gallery. So this part is all about movement. It's about getting them out of their chairs and participating. Of course, there will be that one who doesn't want to do it, but push them. Let's go. Push them and we go. So they have 5 minutes. Now, time constraints are very important in this activity because it is quite a long activity. There's lots of different stops in it. So they have 5 minutes to look around and write brief notes about the house, room, and art piece. And it can be set up very simply. So as the example, so there's name, thing, adjective, and then you have Marta, thing, room, and her adjective is empty. Then you have Nico, is his piece of art, and it's very creative in this case, so it's creative. So they just walk around, very simple, putting down adjectives and matching it.
Silvana had a great idea in the chat that if there's students that aren't confident about drawing, you could always give them the assignment the day before and they could print out a picture that they want to bring in, you know, from the web. They maybe even use one on their phone. Right? But, you know, if we can get them drawing, it might even be better. Okay?
That's actually a really good idea. Yeah, definitely. So let me just move. So writing. So this leads eventually to the writing exercise. Let students know that, that now, as the art critics, they will write about the work they just saw for the newspaper. So this is when it starts to change a little. Using their notes, they will compare at least 5 to their own. Okay, and they would set up very simply as below. Right, so Nico's piece of art is more creative than mine. All right, or Marta's room is emptier than mine. All right, always stressing on comparatives and practicing. Then we move on to the speaking part, which is called under the spotlight. This is when the artist comes up and the students read out their thoughts about their paint, about their work. So this is when they actually read what they've written down. And obviously there will be a bit of back and forth and a bit of discussion, and some will agree, others won't agree. I think the most important part here is just kind of taking part and practicing, putting it into practice.
Okay.
All right. So continuing the idea of discussion, speaking, and so forth, it leads us to, is graffiti art? So obviously graffiti is one of those subjects that is, nowadays, it's very, very common. You see it everywhere, right? There's a new artist coming up all the time, different styles and so forth. And kids actually have a lot of knowledge, usually a lot more knowledge than we do about graffiti. Nevertheless, it never changes the idea that graffiti is still quite a divisive art form. All right, it depends who you ask all the time. So some of the questions you could ask students to start a class discussion is, what's your favorite type of art and art style? How often do you go to museums or art galleries? What artists or graffiti artists do you know? Is graffiti art in your opinion? Why or why not? Would you like to be a graffiti artist, and what would your tag be? So here, obviously, you might need to explain the word tag. It might be different in different languages, different, it depends, but usually it's the names that they create when they sign their work. So these are the things. And then, do you like graffiti? So this is when the class starts to kind of really get into it, because they all have opinions on the matter, depending on who, where you grew up, what you see around you. So, see.
Yeah, let us know your opinions too in the chat. So if you want to answer any of these questions, let us know, and we'll have a look, have a little bit of a discussion in the chat while we continue. Okay. So tell us what you consider art, whether you consider graffiti art, and do you have any favorites or things like that? A big favorite of many people is Banksy. Okay, so we'll, as we talked about in a previous webinar, we've got another look at Banksy here, and I think might not be the last time we look at Banksy in these webinar series. I think it's a really fruitful way of approaching art, approaching discussion topics, something to talk about.
Definitely. Yeah, he actually has basically redefined graffiti. He made it much more, he made it that everybody could see it. That was his whole point. He made it for the people, literally. He brought it forward. So that's why we use it. And it's also in so many textbooks now, so much comprehension, so much reading to do. So when introduced, as soon as you say Banksy, the students are immediately going to know who he is. So you ask students to list objects a graffiti artist like Banksy needs. All right, so we have a spray can, stencils, paint brushes, gloves, protective eyewear, dark, thick clothes. And you can ask as well, like, why? Why do they need these things? I mean, dark, thick clothes, and you can elicit or you can explain. It could be because of the cold weather, or they don't want to be seen, they don't want to be noticed. And what do they not want to be seen from? So what do they need to watch out for? CCTV, security, police, security dogs, and also passerby, someone walking by who could, I don't know, stop him in the act or something. So yeah, and then you can read a text about Banksy too, obviously, as I already said.
we've got this text in the handout, so you should receive this. It's a printable, so you should be able to print it out and use it with your students. Okay? It's taken from a textbook that is face-to-face.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Sort of pre-intermediate level, but to be honest, you can use it even at slightly higher, maybe intermediate level too.
Exactly, yeah. And then show the class some of his artwork. I mean, it could also be homework that they kind of do research, and ask the class about graffiti in their city. Now, like I said, Banksy is the well-known artist, but there are many artists who are just as talented, who are known to the students. Maybe it's like a local graffiti artist. And then they can discuss, they can see different styles, depending on how much they're into graffiti and how much they like it. And then you can also explain the difference between graffiti and murals. So yeah, and in the previous slide, for example, there was the graffiti work of Banksy, and then there was a huge mural of 2 kids on 2 houses. So what is the difference? Which is legal? Which is more pleasing? Is there a reason? Is that what makes it art? Because it's a mural and it's been allowed. So yeah, it's a conversation that is very intense with kids usually. In groups, so to extend, after you've done the various activities you can find on graffiti in groups, ask your students to draw graffiti and come up with a slogan, perhaps. Or it could also be
probably on paper, we hope, not on the desk.
Oh yeah. no on paper. It could be a commercial about a soda drink, or a political message about a topic they care about or that you've been covering in class. So it could be war, bullying, discrimination, or a really good one, which ties in with what's happening now in the news, is every Friday, there's Fridays for Future. So they could actually create slogans and posters for anything that's based on the environment. Most kids are taking days off on Fridays to champion this idea.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and effectively, if you think about the slogans on the signs, they're often the same sort of things, political things, graffiti and things like that. So yeah,
exactly. So yeah, so they can brainstorm in class and then they continue at home, and it's and then they can bring it back and you can do a presentation, like a show and tell, where they explain their idea. So it goes from creating to writing to speaking, interaction. There's a reason Banksy is so popular. It just creates a graffiti in general. It creates a lot of material. And then you can possibly use the walls, which after they've drawn on paper, so you attach onto the wall of the classroom to show the results. And yeah, it should look amazing. Usually these activities look really good.
Okay, sorry, just one moment.
Yeah, sure. So
okay, we have some graffiti here that is going to be referred to. So just have a look at it while Dahlia's explaining, and we're probably going. I think she's going to ask you some questions about it, and these are questions you can actually use also in your classes.
Okay, so this one, obviously, another brick in the wall being Pink Floyd here. These images, these words are very particular because they have been taken from moments in history. So they're examples of how graffiti has been used to send messages. So to expand on the lesson of graffiti, we let them appreciate the difference of the messages that appear on the walls, all right, of our cities in general. So I'm currently living in Naples, and there is loads of messages on the walls. All right, so there's a variety of things, from art to graffiti to a variety of things. So they can try to match the writings of these original writings on the wall to the following description. So we have Brits out, Kilroy was here, Turk 182, Don't Worry, Be Happy, I Love New York, and George Davis is innocent. And they can match it to leave your name, write a message, support a cause, write your tag, so linking to the vocabulary that we mentioned earlier on. Declare your love, this is a very common one, declare your love, and make a political statement. So the students will try to match, what is what, okay? And I think this allows them to kind of have an idea of the different reasons that people write on the walls, really.
Yeah, I think it's also like to be honest, you know, when we have students in Britain or in Ireland or in America in our summer camps, we've always got them attracted to the graffiti in the city. Often
Definitely.
that's what they gravitate to, and so you know, being able to understand it is you know, something extra.
Exactly, definitely. And now, and it's writing your tag these days is so normal. Kids do it all the time. So definitely, you're right. So to go deeper into the whole another brick in the wall idea, we finish by letting the students learn, excuse me, some idioms containing the word wall. All right, so.
Yeah, let us know if you know these idioms. We always have idioms for a lot of topics. And here, there's a lot of them with wall, and a lot of these idioms, I think you might even find graffiti, you know, playing on the fact that it is on the wall. Okay?
True. It's true.
So let us know in the chat if you know any of these. What do you think they mean? It drives me up the wall. Okay, sorry. Let me go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. So we have drives me up the wall. So I won't say what it means. Oh, okay. Should I say what it means, or should I give everybody a chance to guess?
Let's put them all on.
Okay.
And we'll see what people know. Okay.
All right, so we have drives me up the wall. She's the one who wears off the wall clothes. It's like talking to a brick wall and my back's against the wall.
Okay, someone, I think we had Sabina mentioned to get angry, which I imagine she's referring to drives me up the wall. Yes, that's certainly what that means.
Definitely.
And someone else talked about, what is it, back against the wall? We have the translation there by, I think, Carmela. Okay, so yeah, okay, if you have no other option, okay.
Perfect, yeah.
Does anyone know those other ones? It's like talking to a brick wall, okay, and if you wear off the wall clothes, okay, or something is off the wall, okay.
It's like
Daniela said, yeah, it's like talking to nobody, yeah, so talking to a brick wall. Often, Dalia, maybe you'd like to explain what that expression means.
No, talking to a brick wall is talking to somebody who's not listening to you. Usually it's said during a confrontation. So you could give your point and the other person is not taking in the message that you are relaying. So it's basically, it's like you're talking to a wall. The wall does not receive anything. Yeah. So yeah, it's actually quite a good expression. I really like that one. And then we have
that other one, off the wall.
Off the wall clothes is about something being unusual. So it doesn't necessarily need to relate to clothes. It's just about something being strange. For example, if students, usually they listen to like off the wall music, or they have their comedians are off the wall. It's just something that's strange and a little offbeat, awkward.
Yeah.
So
a little unusual one, that one. I think the other ones might be able to you know, have some sort of imagination of what it might mean, but that one maybe drives me up the wall, sort of a bit less obvious. Okay? Yeah, but I have put in the handout a few websites where you can see a lot of these wall idioms, and I think even some YouTube videos. So there's a lot more too. So wall is quite a common word to find in idioms. Okay?
All right, so guess who? All right, so this is a very common game that's played in English classes. And this time we just do it with images, really, of something they can relate to. So we show the class some 20 or more famous figures from music, sports, politics, cinema, portraits. It can be anything. Right? The idea is diversity, to show different types of images, different cultures, different people with different like skin colors, so they can just use their vocabulary. It's all about just using what is in the world into their classroom. So this is a speaking activity, and it can turn very competitive very quickly. In this case, it's a good thing. I'm not going to complain about it. Yeah.
No, I think we often have these sort of competitive things, and there's a time and place for them for sure, you know, and as long as it, you know, is a productive sort of competitiveness, I think it's always a good idea.
So we split the class into 2 teams, and each team which will choose one famous character and write it in their notebook. and he or she will keep this a secret. And in turns, they will come one by one to the board. Right? The opposite team will have to guess who or she is, or by asking yes or no questions. So, are you American? Are you a singer? Have you got dark hair? Do you like painting? Any question that kind of just, obviously they're free reign, but it's all yes or no questions. And it's basically, it's just a fun way to practice describing people, or to even use as a warmer in a class when you want them to kind of looking a bit quiet. It's a nice way to kind of wake up the class and be prepared to speak in class.
I think this is often a good way to practice short answers too.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, are you American? Yeah, everyone has to say yes, you are, not just
Exactly.
yes.
Yeah.
You know, have you got dark hair? Yes, you have. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like this. So yes, you do. Yes,
Yeah.
you did, etc. Things like that. I think
Okay.
you know, letting the people not just asking the question. It's often it's a great way to sort of test people's ability to do those short answers. Okay?
It's true. Yeah, no, definitely.
I like the idea with the pictures too. You know, it's a new twist on it.
Yeah. And then, yeah, it's especially good for practicing question formation and different auxiliary verbs, which a lot of students actually struggle with. I think it's something that's common in all levels, whether you're a beginner or actually, even if you're a higher level student, there's always the mistake of changing, sometimes translating from Italian into English. So they tend to trip onto themselves, like by accident, doing the wrong, asking the wrong question.
Often I sort of don't give them the permission. They won't get an answer unless the question's correct. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
No, that wasn't correct. Try again.
Okay? Yeah.
You know? And then once they get it, they have the sense of achievement because they actually get an answer there.
Exactly. It's it's one of those games that they would want to play repetitively. It's very rare that students don't like Guess Who. It's always a winner.
I think these are also good, you know, something you can use as a reward. A lot of our activities in these webinars are sort of things that you can use at the end of a class or doing on time or as a reward for good behavior. And,
exactly,
you know, they don't know that it's actually, you know, one of the key parts of the lesson as well. You know,
yeah.
Getting to practice what they've learned.
Definitely. True. All right. So in conclusion, learning English through art and graffiti can be fun and facilitate the process of learning. All right, as we said throughout the lesson, it's about them taking part at the end of the day and using language and having fun with it and being stimulated in a completely different way instead of just using their books.
Yeah, I think also, you know, with art and particularly with graffiti, everyone's got some opinion on it.
Yes.
Okay. Whether they like it, they don't like it, or even they just say, I don't really care. Okay. Even that is, you know, something to say about it.
Definitely.
Okay?
Definitely.
And so, you know, to give them new topics all the time, as we try to do in this webinar series, you know, you're constantly getting to use new vocabulary and to express their opinion.
Exactly, yeah. Some of the most popular concentration training exercises are based on visual experience. It lets students change their habits in the way they approach images. So, for example, with the Guess Who, the fact that they're seeing different types of images and it's not always the regular Guess Who games, it allows them to use and just to connect with images. It's usually if you use something that's from music, for example, they are more eager to speak. All right, here I've used paintings, but if you use images that they recognize, I don't know, if you use a Beyonce, for example, they're more likely to ask questions and get really excited.
Reminds me of the idiom, pictures worth 1,000 words, okay? Which we hope will be in the classrooms.
Exactly, yeah. And finally, foreign language learners perform much better if images are used in a lesson. Visual learning is a fantastic method which can involve withdrawn students. So again, going back to the idea of building a community in a class and letting everyone be together and not being separated by levels or one being an introvert and the other one being an extrovert. It's kind of just levels the playing field for all the students. So yeah, it's a method that I really enjoy, actually.
Well, that sort of brings us to the end I'd like to just ask people in the chat to let us know if you have any suggestions for future webinars. We've got a lot of ideas, and in fact, Dahlia will be joining us in future webinars to talk about some other topics. But keep letting us know, whether it's by emailing us or whether you can write in the chat now. Please let us know what you'd like us to incorporate in future webinars. Okay? Thanks for your attention, and particularly a big thank you to Dahlia.
Thank you,
it's
guys.
her first time on our webinar series, but it certainly won't be her last. Okay, and I think it's you'll find a lot of stuff in this webinar that you can use in your classrooms. Okay. And as I said at the beginning, you will receive a certificate of participation and a handout, okay, with all those. We don't have a lot of images because they're copyrighted, okay, but obviously for the images you can find them all online, okay. But all the text that we've had in there is in there, and also some extras too, with the website links and things like that. We also have some website links to information on our blog about art, about graffiti, about Banksy, okay? And even a link to our past Banksy webinar. Okay? Next week, we have a webinar on a book called Shelter, a young adult book called Shelter. Even if you haven't read the book or you haven't used the book, come into the webinar, because our MLA blogger, Francesca, will be talking about how you can use this book, or even books like it. Okay, it doesn't need to be restricted to this book, but a way of looking at one text and all the different approaches, including CLIL, including inclusive teaching, civics, and even sort of talking about the book itself in the type of literary discussion. Okay, so I really hope you'll join us again. And again, a big thank you to Dahlia, okay, and a thank you to all our participants. Okay, so thank you, and I hope to see you again next week. Okay.
All right, thank you, guys.
Okay, goodbye. Bye bye.